An Olodo is not necessarily someone who doesn't know. An Olodo is someone who doesn't know that he doesn't know. And even when he's made known of the fact that he doesn't know, is refusing to accept the fact that he doesn't know and is refusing to learn.
Oh, Peller, there's a whole Peller culture going on, and we understand the feud in which Peller is in. And then someone like Ycee can grace Kata Ife's stream.
If someone is really an Olodo in real life, they will naturally attract Olodos.
Bam.
What-
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Based on My Opinion podcast. I am your host, Kemi. But before we dive into today's episode, let's look into the definitions of some terms that has been trending on social media, made by a very popular, rapper in Nigeria, Ycee, Olodo Uprising. So I'm just going to go through some of the definition. Can production help me with medicated or prescribed glasses, please? Thank you, because this is very serious matter. It's a very serious one. Okay. So first of all, what is Olodo? And then we're going to look into uprising. Then the whole context of Olodo Uprising. So Olodo is a Yoruba word, and it means dull, unintelligent, academically weak, or just a dumb person in layman's language. Someone perceived as lacking formal education or intellectual sharpness. Then what is uprising? It refers to the perceived rise in influence, fame, and financial success of people, especially young content creators and influencers who openly embarrass or perform Olodo traits. What are Olodo traits? Being unpolished, unacademical, raw, chaotic, or even intentionally ignoring or intentional ignorance on social media while achieving massive popularity and wealth. So grab a drink, popcorn, and let's tackle. But first of all, let our guest introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Musa, and it's good to be back. Very spicy subject we have today. One I've personally been looking forward to unpacking with you.
Wow.
So happy to be here.
Okay, so
Yeah.
with the whole explanation I just gave, what do you think Olodo Uprising is from your own perspective?
Oh, this is gonna be good. Okay, so let's start with the definition of terms. Technically speaking, those definitions are correct. That's the typical context of what an Olodo is. I mean, many of us who grew up in the West or in the South, there used to be, I think there still is a song that we used to tease each other, when we do dumb things, Olodo, so we all know it, right? However, because this whole Olodo Uprising thing became popular following Ycee's comment,
Yes.
there is some truth to the definitions in the context,
True.
but there are some mutations of those definitions that I don't believe are entirely captured, while there are certain elements in it that may not be exactly what Ycee meant to say. Okay, because I don't believe he was explicitly or implicitly bashing uneducated people. Like
Okay.
there's a context to his statement.
Whole thing.
Yes, but the Olodo Uprising, first of all, I don't want to reduce it to
Just education.
yes, to a discussion about educated people versus uneducated people. Okay, it's really about, it's a conversation about whether or not the Nigerian society is, or Nigerian social media specifically, is increasingly rewarding performative ignorance. Yes. and outrage and virality over competence and real substance. So that's where the conversation is about. It's not really about do we have more educated people in society versus uneducated people. It's really about what the social media is doing with the kind of content that is daily being shoved down the throats of people, and the forces that shape, influence, or control the Nigerian entertainment industry as a whole.
Okay.
So yeah, that phrase Olodo Uprising was used to describe the current phenomena that we're observing in the entertainment industry.
I like that you said we shouldn't reduce everything to just the direction of education, because when Ycee made that statement, it literally caused a national debate, and people are just seeing it from an angle of an uneducated person just making all of this wealth. So it now leads me to the question that, do you think we as a society, like Nigerian, quote unquote, are we celebrating, mediocrity, or these content creators are just leveraging on failing system, and there are many uneducated people that are unemployed that cannot even make ends meet for themselves? So do you feel like this has shifted to celebrating mediocrity, or these are just really smart people that are making money out of a failing system?
Yes, so I think in other words, the question then becomes, is this happening accidentally or is it carefully orchestrated? Is there an intelligent force that is harnessing the power of social media as a tool, or what easily grabs the attention of people, monetizing it, and just basically trying to increase the rate of brain rot in our society because it pays well? So yeah, I think that's a good question. But I'd like us to understand that, first of all, it's not, there is the Olodo problem, but it's not first about the Olodo problem as much as it is about an incentive problem. And by incentive now, I mean what influences people to do what they do. People respond to what society rewards, right? So content creators themselves, the supply is based on the demand.
Full stop.
So that's a good place to start. People respond to what society rewards. Now, if we pay more attention to controversy, we shouldn't be surprised when controversy becomes people's career.
Exactly.
They make a career out of controversy. Exactly. So this now shifts the conversation from blaming individuals to examining the systems and the platforms that shape human behavior, both on the part of the content creators themselves and the people who consume said content. Okay, now that's one. Now, secondly, education and entertainment are not enemies. Okay.
Did you hear that, the guys?
Well,
they're not enemies.
You don't have to have a university degree to make sense or to be entertaining
or to be smart.
Besides, there is such a thing as smart humor. Humor doesn't only appeal to the ridiculous and mundane things. Humor also appeals to critical reasoning and the way we see life or perceive life in general. Okay, so the person who made the comment, Ycee, is himself a very educated man. He is an entertainer. There are many Nigerian entertainers who have university or master's degrees. Education itself is a very, very intelligent industry. Entertainment rather is itself you have to be smart. You really have to. So I don't think we're talking about entertainment versus education as if you are an entertainer, then you are necessarily especially of a lower IQ, or if you favor education and intellectualism, then you cannot necessarily be an entertainer, or you are too serious to consider entertainment as a worthwhile field of endeavor. So there's nothing wrong about being funny or entertaining. The issue begins when ignorance itself becomes the product. When ignorance itself is the product that is being sold, that's where the problem is. So that's why I said, if we go back to the definitions of what an Olodo is not necessarily someone who doesn't know. An Olodo is someone who doesn't know that he doesn't know. And even when he's made known of the fact that he doesn't know, is refusing to accept the fact that he doesn't know and is refusing to learn. Not someone who has a learning difficulty, not someone who has a mental challenge, not someone who has cognitive dissonance or all of those learning problems, right? And Olodo is someone who is intentionally uncivilized and believes that that is the life, that is the lifestyle. And Olodo is a person who is a model of everything wrong with society.
Oops.
Yes.
Oops.
And the problem with entertainers, and people in the content space living this kind of life or exhibiting such behaviors is the fact that they don't know, maybe they know, maybe it's part of their marketing, but fame, influence is a side product of fame. Most people chase fame and popularity. They're not responsible to handle the influence that comes with it. Because being a popular person or a famous person, apart from young people that are impressionable, your life and your ideals start to become what is generally accepted as representative of the sector you're in.
Okay.
So it's easy for people to believe that entertainers are basically unintelligent people who just set out to make a living based off of ridiculousness, while we have larger issues in society to address. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, even in medieval times, when the empirical system and the monarchy was still a thing in most parts of the world, entertainment had a high value in society. That's why it was someone's full occupation to be a court jester. Clowns were actual employees in the king's court. So humor and laughter and fun, it's all part of culture. There's a place for that.
Yeah.
But the problem then arises when that becomes what is aspired to. And now I'm not even saying that it should only be treated as an escape. No. But when that becomes it's just, for example, let's say we have a crisis rocking the nation. For example, the issue of these children that have been adopted. And then rather than having our collective consciousness drawn to the fact that we all ought to use every opportunity to speak up and to contribute towards the effort that is trying to rescue these children, we have people who are displaying an obscene level of emotional unintelligence, not only to the point where they can't relate with it, but they continue putting out content that the social media will then use to distract the populace from the current issues that are on ground, because social media algorithms, that's a whole other subject on their own, rather than focus on the deeper and more serious issues in society. So like I said, there are many nuances to it, but
one thing I took out of your whole sentences is you're going to supply based on demand. So if, for example, I want to use Peller, for example, as you said also that Ycee is a very intelligent person and he's also into, the whole creation space. He's a music person. And my question is, do you think the whole phrase of Olodo Uprising is based on what we as individuals perceive as intelligent or academically sound? Because if someone like Ycee could make a statement that, Peller, there's a whole Peller culture going on and we understand the feud in which Peller is in, and then someone like Ycee can grace Kata Efe's stream, and we all know the kind of content Kata Efe makes. It now feels like he's contradicting himself. So is it like what I see as intellectually sound might not what you see as intellectually sound? So it's not even like an Olodo Uprising, it's what we perceive as morally right, academically right, or societally right, or all of those stuff. So do you feel it's an individual thing or something we've already grouped like this one, bam, it be Olodo? Because if, for example, now you can see people with businesses, people that build business move, and something as simple as how do you share on WhatsApp? They don't know how to do that. I'm even trying to phrase to our own parents. You see that they're business owners, they've made a life, they've made a name for themselves. And you hear, oh, can you help me? And how do you share on WhatsApp? Somebody might perceive that as someone being Olodo, but these are people that have built businesses. So is it just like a personal reference thing, like, oh, I see this as Olodo Uprising and it's not for maybe actually an Olodo thing?
Okay, well, first statement I'll make to that is the fact that education is not the same with intelligence. First, those are two different things. Okay.
Nigerians hear this because someone speaks good English, or they're good in English to be specific. You guys automatically feel like, oh my god, this person's so good. Nope.
Well, it takes a certain level
It's
of
not the same.
mental acumen to be educated in a formal or informal system, but intelligence is inbuilt. Intelligence is a characteristic of your brain function. Okay, it's basic raw material. Education, you have to go through a system, whether structured or unstructured, formal or informal, come out on the other end, and then you are identified as one who is educated. Of course, you have to show workings. So education is actually context specific, right? Now, intelligence is a more broader trait, which is seen as the ability to think and reason critically, to make sound decisions, to observe and perceive the world around you, and to communicate or contribute positively to society. Okay, even in things as little as a conversation, that's why they're called intelligent conversations, or even in other ways, such as how you relate and communicate with people, which is what we call emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And then there are other specific contexts of intelligence, like financial intelligence. That has a lot to do with knowledge and how your mind works or how it operates. So that's one thing. Secondly, there's a culture problem. Now, Ycee, apart from saying that there is an Olodo Uprising, spoke about something else he called the Peller culture. Now, that's the lifestyle and mindset of the people that represent, I don't want to say the absolute worst values in society, but people whose lives do not necessarily reflect our societally acceptable views on life and human behavior. Okay. And these are the people who, unfortunately, because they're famous, have the most influence, not only on young minds, but on the narrative that is being sold generally about Nigerians and who we are as a people. So that's another thing. Now, thirdly, like I said, intelligence, or rather education, is contextual. So Olodo is not someone who is technologically challenged. Okay, there are people who are very educated and very intelligent, but they are slow to adapt to certain technologies.
Sure.
So you can have people who are very successful, but are still, they are on the lower spectrum. They are late adapters to new technology.
Sure.
So that's not an intelligence problem.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not an intelligence
as
problem.
much as I don't want to tie this to success, because one of the arguments was like, oh, I know that a lot of people with money will say, okay, how would you call this person an Olodo, but they're this successful? As much as I don't want to tie it to money, I feel like it takes a very smart person, really smart person, to be able to, sell, or whether it's content or whatever, to make money out of Nigerians. It takes a smart person. Because on that podcast also, they had mentioned like the whole Yahoo culture. And I was just laughing, like, do you know it's someone that is actually very intelligent that can go into Yahoo and stuff like that. So maybe it's like, I don't know, maybe it's the lifestyle that they are seen as Olodo, and not actually their creativity itself. Maybe it's okay, why are you shouting, why are you yelling, all the chaos and all of those stuff. Not actual, because it takes a smart person to be like, you know what, we have a generation that what makes them feel happy is being chaotic, being controversial. Okay, I'm gonna make a life out of that. That's where I'm not saying there are things that Peller does that I'm like, honey, that's not good. No. That's not good. If you're it's just like, me, for example, I used to tell people the only person in Nigeria I find funny is Lai Wasabi. The rest, I don't understand what you are doing. And maybe it's because that's just the kind of content I relate to, which is leading me to the next question. So are these people really Olodo, or this is just people they can relate to? Like me, I relate to Lai Wasabi joke. Some people can watch Lai Wasabi joke and they're like,
That's not funny.
what's funny here? And then some people are watching Peller's stream and I'm like, what is funny here?
That's dumb.
So do you feel like even how how relatable or how authentic somebody is actually what made them like relate, and it's not just even an Olodo thing at the end of the day?
Well, like we said from the beginning, the ability to relate to a certain demographic of people is actually a form of intelligence. The ability to identify such people, know who your market is, create content that appeals to them, whether for the sake of influence or exploitation, whatever your motive is. It takes some level, but birds of a feather flock together. Okay. If someone is really an Olodo in real life, they will naturally attract Olodos.
Bam.
Whatever it is they put out. Because it's not
they will have the audience for it.
Because it's not just the content, it's also the person, the personality, and everything they represent as a person, their standards, So there is that. But also, like we said, influencers are actually a representation of the people they influence. Okay. It's true. In the same way that our leaders are a reflection of us, the people, what we consume, are a reflection of our current state of mind, our current level of intelligence. We assume that people would relate to what enlightens them and open their mind. But some people are really only after content that simplifies or oversimplifies stuff, or things that are basically just mundane and unimportant in the grand scheme of things. So it really depends on the person. It varies from person to person.
Sure. So let's drive this whole conversation into the society.
Yeah.
And for example, now it seems like if you go through comments, you hear people be like, "Oh, academic underachiever." Like it's like they're pouring out their frustration, and it seems like people have this perspective or expectation of successful people. So I don't want this to sound like classism, but it's sounding the same way, because I saw a comment that said, you wouldn't see Otedola daughter make this kind of content. So they are surprised that someone that's been able to attain this level of wealth can still be this chaotic, can still be this raw. So do you feel like classism also is hiding in that statement, Olodo Uprising? I'm not even saying maybe necessarily from Ycee, but people also shouting it. It's like, Otedola daughter is not going to behave like that. Dangote daughter is... I'm like, let's be realistic. In a country where there's in fact, a high rate of unemployment is insane. And this person has been able to make something out of it. And you guys are expecting maybe he's going to leave a certain aesthetic, but then he's still being his authentic self, which is chaotic, loud, and all of those stuff. So do you feel like there's classism hiding in this whole statement of Olodo Uprising?
Okay, well, the last thing you said before you repeating the question, we have to ask whether we're talking about people who are unintelligent, who just became famous, or if these are people who are actually intelligent and are exploiting the market that desires the ridiculous. Because those are two different things. Okay, you can have a smart person act dumb just to make a few coins. That is a smart plan.
Yeah.
If they know how to appeal to the right market, their target audience. So, but if we're talking about really and when I say unintelligent people, it shouldn't become classism, because intelligence itself is not a status symbol. Okay, people are naturally intelligent. There are ways that you can develop intelligence, whether broadly speaking in terms of brain function or in specific context, right? But intelligence and achievement or even education should not become a status symbol, even though no matter how you look at it, education, it really, it is an achievement, but it's not
Of course
something
it
that,
is.
yeah, it's not something that you should be, that should make anyone feel better than anyone else.
True.
Okay, so that's how to avoid the classism. We're not arguing about whether education is important or not. What we're saying is, can we celebrate and promote creativity without ridiculing knowledge or education?
Yes.
Can we enjoy entertainment without aspiring towards ignorance? Because that is really what the Olodo Uprising is
It's all
about.
about.
Aspiring towards ignorance, towards mediocrity, towards a lack of excellence, or positivity, or impact or positive contribution to society, or to thoughts that shape modern life.
Like, if you go through social media a lot of even marketing style, content creating is changing to chaotic, loud dancing. Is he a because me, I'll always be the realistic person.
Yeah.
As somebody say, "You get as hand will meet you." You will even know when you start doing some things, because you have to survive. When you're in survival mode, there's nothing you won't literally do. So do you feel like, because as much as we want to celebrate this kind of content, what you take in kind of shape and wires how you think? So are we seeing like a rise of death in intellectualism, and we're trying to celebrate, this person was able to make this mess and they made something out of it? Like, are we seeing the dead, like low-key? Things like this, it's just be happening beats by beats, and then you notice that there's a whole generation that is just not smart at all.
Well,
And
we live in a society that celebrates success by any means, and success in society means money and fame,
full stop.
by whatever means you obtain
Full
it.
stop.
It is important to celebrate intellectualism, because first of all, it contributes to human development. Secondly, it contributes to societal development, to nation building, in any context where intelligence is applied. So the problem is virality is not validation. Yes. Popularity and competence are not the same thing. The loudest voice is not always the wisest voice. The most obvious path is not always the right one. We know that algorithms don't care. Marketing strategies and campaigns don't care. It is what is acceptable that they will exploit. We understand that. But at the end of the day, success without substance may trend, but substance always outlives trend. Content creators who only create trends or exploit trends will always live in the shadow of people who put out actual things of value and substance as time passes. So like I said, people react to what society celebrates. If this is what society wants, let's give society what it wants, and make a living while at it. I understand that, but at the end of the day, we can only change and make a positive impact in society when we choose to contribute intelligently.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in a world where we constantly hear, book no they pay, education no they pay, or hear things like, the A students are working for the C students, or the just all those phrases and everything. So my question is, how can we both I'm looking for a simple word to put it that it suits. How can formal education, and I don't want to say Olodo as a person, but Olodo content, how can they coexist without one destroying the other? Because as much as we want to say, okay, we want more intellectual, educative, impactful content, Nigerians don't have the attention span to sit down to listen or watch educative content. They want that quick dopamine.
True.
So how can two of them coexist without one, destroying the other?
Well, I believe that there's a place for both. In fact, both are needed. Yeah. The doctor is just as important to human health as the comedian. One deals with overall clinical health, and comedy. Of course, comedy is not necessarily a clinical prescription, but we know that for the average person, there's dopamine hit you get from, I don't know, relaxing, watching crazy content or ridiculous content and all that. So there's a place for both. There is demand for both. There's a place for both, and there's a need for both. Both can coexist because I believe that for a person to be balanced, they have to have both. You have to both learn and be entertained. But the two are not mutually exclusive. You can learn while being entertained, but there are people who cater specifically to those two niches, those spaces, so they can coexist. The elitism or classism only arises where they insult one another rather than encourage growth, right? The only problem is that in the space where content is created to entertain, it must not promote destructive patterns or lifestyles.
Sure.
It must not exemplify a way of life that is antithetical to our morals as a society. It must not promote ignorance or chaos. It must not promote what's the word now? Like I said, just I'm not even talking about humor.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about lifestyles that do not represent us well as a people.
True.
Yeah, so they can coexist.
All right. So another one I wanted to say is, if we have a generation whereby Olodo content creators are making millions, I'm talking real money, like this kind of content transforms their life. And then on the other hand, we're seeing whether it's an educative, impactful, whatever way it's impacting your life, whether spiritually or financially, these people are not doing well. In fact, you see these Olodo contents do giveaway, and if you go and check the people under those giveaway, these people are smart people. So my own is, what message do you think is passing to the next generation? Like, should we lean more on the Olodo hustle, or should we lean more into the school system, or just in generally smart? What message do you feel it's passing at this point?
The school system has its own issues. I mean, we know that right now, the surest path to wealth is innovation and entrepreneurship in technology or in systems. Yes. So the typical path to success or financial reward is not necessarily the professionally educated career path. It's not. Let's be honest. And you did say something very important.
Okay.
The Olodo hustle. Yeah, because these people then become inspirational in some type of way. And you have people aspiring not just to be like them, but to do what they do. which basically is a system that feeds itself, and you have more people devolving into this kind of lifestyle. And I'm particular about the lifestyle, not necessarily about the content, although the content itself contributes to the mental decline, whether we like it or not. But so the message that it passes, whether they know it or not, is the fact that first, you can be rich, you can become rich and famous
From being
by really contributing very little to society, except promoting chaos and disorder and controversy, and but then again, in the same way that producers and promoters usually make more than the artist, except in this generation where artists are starting to become smart about managing their money.
Yes.
It's the same way that you might actually have very smart people who are not Olodos in themselves exploiting these Olodos and are making money off the back end of this. But in any case, it is a thriving industry. The direct message is not always positive because it promotes this as a culture and as a means to wealth and fame. But then again, we should have more people who are encouraging people to. We will always have need for intellectuals in society. We always have need for professionals in society, for people who are positive influencers who contribute, to the to intellectual development and who put out such content.
Okay. So do you feel like knowingly or unknowingly in a society whereby, or in a world whereby clicks on screen and scrolling favors more critical thinking, do you feel like in the next 10 to 20 years for Nigeria, if this whole Olodo content or whatever it is goes unchecked, do you feel like it's going to worsen the whole term or be worsen the whole academic system? Because it feels like I've seen where Olodo content creators have stepped into rooms where educated people, I don't want to use educative people, where people that maybe put out really good content would never step into. So do you feel like with time it's just going to worsen the whole education system that we're even trying to repair, or just even the whole intelligent people situation thing? Do you feel like in the next 10-20 years it's going to affect?
Well, our collective intelligence is at stake if people who promote dumb things are actually the biggest influencers in society. Our entire lifestyle and perception as a people will evolve in the wrong direction. But the fact that there are all intelligent people that are influencing society through social media and that they are getting opportunities that many intelligent people do not get is, it shouldn't become what then makes it acceptable or inspirational.
Okay.
Yeah, it should not. Our educational system generally is in a downward spiral due to a number of factors. Of course, there's the failing system in itself, but there is also the generational deficit that we're experiencing because of technology and social media and its development over time. The short attention spans, our inability to focus, depression, anxiety, things that social media has been proven to have a direct, or to be a strong contributing factor towards, right? So those are all things that affect our mental and intellectual capacities. So these things all feed into the problem, and then it translates into academic performance and into what we can produce as a society across different spheres. So it is a problem. It is a real danger, but then we can always do something about it.
All right. So my next question is: should the government, schools, or platform? Because if you notice on your FYP, you see more of this content, and sometimes if you want to get maybe information, you have to literally search for it. It seems like the algorithm favor more of this content and stuff like that. So do you feel like government, schools, or platform to interfere, e.g., maybe regulation on content and just kind of this kind of content you can't put it out, or if you notice there are some app that you put some content, they would either block the account or something. So do you feel like there should be a regulation that can regulate the kind of content that's being put out there?
Well, there should be certain types of content that should not make it into mainstream media. There should be, and even on social media apps or news channels or mediums, there are certain content that are flagged content that promotes violence, abuse, or certain kinds of filters that are applied generally, across the spectrum. Now, if you campaign for intervention or regulation, the first argument against it would be that it would be against people's freedom of expression.
Yes. That's
So
another
that's
thing.
that's the first argument. But then, secondly, I mean, we've known of governments and regimes where, like in communism, where the media and the spread of information is highly regulated. Now, of course, we know that those have a destructive effect on society because government can use it as a weapon of control.
Sure.
So, but there's no way to fully you can't tell people what is good for them, even if you know what is good for them. That's the problem. Everyone has a free will, and as the way social media works, what you indicate that you are more interested in by your engagement is what they feed you more and more of. So government regulation, I don't know if it would be really advisable or if it would work at all. Because governments come and go. The problem with that would be even sustainability. How do you ensure that you are correctly influencing the people over time? And would that even become a priority for any government? But I think the responsibility is on us as individuals. Yeah. If you believe in intellectual conversations and contributions and content that is smart and inspirational and edifying, of course, you will always have a need for comic relief, and healthy sources to get your comic relief from. But you can only encourage people to engage more of the things that contribute to their development, because social media, the algorithm is just a tool. It's what you're interested in that it will feed you.
All right. So this last question is to our guests and also to the audience. Who even is really the Olodo? The content creators will make this kind of content, or the society that creates a condition where it can thrive? Because if people are not consuming all of these things, of course, it will make them make another U-turn. Okay, let's try something else. So who is the real Olodo at the end of the day? These content creators, or we as a society that make environment for it to strive?
Well, the simple answer is that in the same way that leaders are a reflection of the people, our influences are a reflection of us. If that is what the larger society feels more interested in, then it typically shows the decline in our quality of people as a society. We cannot blame the influencers themselves. They are not the problem. They are also trying to make a living.
Just trying to get the bag.
Yeah.
We're just trying to get the bag. All right. Thank you so much for tackling this whole conversation. I would have given some examples of Olodo Uprising, but to avoid the avoidable, I'm just going to leave that in my notes. Thank you for joining us on today's
Always
episode.
a pleasure.
We're really glad. We are really glad. The whole of Bomo is glad.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this episode has been a very interesting one, I must say. But then, as I said before the video ended, or before the episode ended, who truly is even the Olodo? Or who are the biggest contributors of Olodo Uprising? So if you found this episode interesting, don't forget to drop a comment, like, subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on all our socials at bomob_WK. See you later. Take care of yourself and take care of others. Bye.